recording this. There we go. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining our quick learning opportunity, our webinar here at the main Downtown Center. I am Ann Ball, the Program Director of the Downtown Center. And we are recording this, as I said, and I'm going to share my screen and we will get started. And if you have questions during the presentation, feel free to use the chat feature. Let's see. Delilah, can you see my screen?
I do.
All right. Let me just get this going. There we go. So the webinar this morning will take 40 to 45 minutes. And as I said, we are recording it and we'll send out a link at the end of the session in case you'd like to share it with other members of your downtown organization. I'd like to thank our sponsors. We can't do any of this work without them. And a few notes for today, which I've pretty much already said, but we will be not only sending you a recording, but also sending you a quick survey link. And there are a number of handouts today that we will be referencing, sample surveys and things, and we will also make those available to you. So we will send you a link after the webinar so that you can access those handouts. So today's topic, we are going to be talking about downtown data, and we are being joined by Delilah Pupor, who is the director of the Heart of Biddeford, who is going to talk about a lot of the work they do in Biddeford and how it informs the work that their downtown organization does and the decisions that they make. Very briefly, the revised Main Street approach, which was really revised about 3 years ago now, is actually based in community visioning and market understanding. And then that leads to both qualitative and quantitative outcomes by using a transformational strategy through the 4 points. So it's a little different than it used to be when it was first designed. But the big thing I use this slide to show you is that understanding of the market, which I think you'll see in Biddeford is a way they use a lot of this data gathering, is to take a look at the market, both internally in the community and externally. So there's a lot of data that you guys know is just readily available that really can help identify weaknesses and opportunities in the marketplace. And these are things that are available to all of our downtowns: demographic data, sales tax data, you know, real estate assessments. And these are things that you can all access to, you know, study, take a look at. And then there's original research, which is largely what Biddeford is going to share with us. Things like business owners surveys, business inventories. What are the businesses that are in your downtown? What is the makeup? Do you have, you know, 10 hair salons, or do you have 2? You know, what does your mix of businesses look like? And then intercept surveys, where you really talk to the residents that are downtown or the visitors downtown. And I think Delilah has some examples of those as well. So again, as a reminder, if you do have questions during the presentation, feel free to chime in, and yeah, I can read your questions and share them with Delilah at the same time as we go through this. So Delilah, I'm going to hand it over to you and have you get started, and just let me know when you want me to advance the slides.
Great. Hopefully you can hear me as I'm talking.
Yep, I can hear you great.
Thanks for inviting me to do this. It helped me think back to some of the different data collection that we've done, how we've collected data, and where we've shared it. And hopefully some of these ideas will spur thoughts for other people. I definitely want to say that I am not a research analyst. It's probably been 25 years since I've run a crosstab, and I can't really even tell you what a crosstab is, but I know that that's what data people do. And you know, if you look at this one picture, you could say, you know, downtown Biddeford, that's an amazing place. They have tables in the middle of their downtown and they serve free pie. And that's because if you don't have enough data, you can come to conclusions that aren't necessarily accurate. We only have free pie and tables in the middle of Main Street on River Jam Festival, Fringe Fest. But that's just a little point about data, being kind of aware of how scientifically your data is collected. A lot of what I'm going to explain to you here is not highly scientific. It's pretty kind of practical user information that you can decide how well it applies to any decisions you're making based on how rigorous your research was. And I think you'll see some of my examples were more rigorous than others. Go ahead and complete. Next slide.
Okay.
Here is just a little summary from 2 online sites that you can use. The top one is from Esri, ESRI, and the other is Prism. Those are both platforms where you can get information about your community in terms of psychographics. And the psychographics are attitudes, aspirations of people in your community, and usually by these 2 companies anyway, kind of put into groups like Set to Impress or Front Porchers. And as they tell you that 27% of your population is from that group, they'll also describe more of those characteristics. And sometimes the descriptions that they provide are so detailed, you're like, how on earth do they know any of these things? But they do use 16 or so different sources of data, and then they compile that about your community, and they can tell you your major groups. You can also pinpoint it to just a certain area of your community, like the downtown. And that kind of information could be used for planning events. We have a lot of young families. Both of those top 2 are in the young family category, for example. So our events should tend to address the needs of young families, or we're just not reaching our market. They can also be used for literally market decisions if we want to be advertising somewhere, or if we're wanting to choose a particular group to boost to on Facebook, we can refer to this kind of market segmentation information. We are doing it again now. This information was from several years ago, so we reran it recently and have some changes in that. So I have a group on our organization committee who's analyzing those results and deciding how they're going to impact our events as well as our marketing decisions. Go ahead, Anne.
Yeah, I have a question, Delilah. Is there a fee for you to use Esri or Prism?
Yes. Just to run one report is $50.
Okay.
And I found that that has been worth it. We've gotten enough information to make that worth it. You can also get a subscription and get layers and layers of information. So, you know, it might be something that a town or city's economic development department would partner with you on. They may already have it, or the local, like we have a small business development center that's in serves Biddeford and Saco. They may have these resources. Somebody might be willing to run it for you instead of paying that cost too.
Great. Thanks for letting us know.
Yeah. Here's a really quick, practical type of survey that we've done each year. And for each thing that I show you, I kind of broke it down into creating a tool so that we can collect the information, and then analyzing that information, and then sharing it. So we created a 1-minute survey, we thought, for our restaurant week, which encourages people to go downtown for a week in March and experience a lot of different restaurants. And this was a paper survey left all over town, along with a little ballot box so that people could turn those in. We probably made a couple thousand ballots that we brought everywhere, and then we also posted next to it where they could fill it out online with a Google form if they preferred. That when we decided what questions to do it, we've been doing this now for maybe 5 years. So each year we end up fine-tuning our questions. We realize that a certain question we asked wasn't clear enough, so we have to clarify it, or that we asked that question, but we have no idea what we would ever do with the information if we had it. So we trimmed it down, but I always find that it's helpful to ask for their email address And then it's great to put a little checkbox next to that as well, which doesn't show on this, to say, would you like to be included on Heart of Biddeford's email newsletter that comes out weekly? And that's just asking everybody all the time for their email addresses. When you're asking them about anything else, make sure to ask them if they'd like to join your newsletter.
Great reminder.
And on the right-hand side of the screen is what would you like to see more of downtown? We've been collecting that information in various places too. Restaurant Week isn't necessarily a time where people who are coming downtown to eat, even know what else is in your downtown. So we have at other times asked them, what do you come downtown for? Or this specific question, what would you like to see more of? And then when we have that information, we have different ways to share it. Go ahead. And we always write up the results afterwards. This is usually handled within our Business Enhancement Committee. Even though Restaurant Week is run by our promotions folks, the analysis and survey kind of processes are handled through Business Enhancement in our case. It can make sense for any number of groups to handle it, but that's how it works at Heart of Biddeford. And so when you have a result, it can be helpful for your marketing. For example, 3/4 of the respondents of our survey, and that year, I think, yeah, we had 400 surveys were completed. And 3/4 of the people were from Biddeford or Saco who filled out the survey. And then the remaining 26% were from 30 different communities. So if our restaurants or Heart of Biddeford wants to promote Restaurant Week or the restaurants, we can definitely know that we're spending our money wisely to invest in marketing in Biddeford and Saco, because those are the folks who are coming downtown. And then that question I had asked about what would you like to see more of downtown, if you look at the bottom of the screen,
Oh, Delilah, you just froze. Hold on, we seem to have a frozen webinar for a second. Delilah. Okay. Hold on, I'm not sure what's up with her connection. Delilah, can you bear with us one second? Okay. She's dropped out completely. She's going to come back, I'm sure. Let's see. Okay. Bear with us. I think Delilah is reopening her screen and coming back in. Apologize for the technical difficulties. Sometimes this happens when we are not hardwired in, and that may be the case with Delilah, so hopefully she's coming right back in. And if anyone has any questions at this point, please go ahead and use that chat feature on the bottom. Okay. Hopefully she is rejoining us. And if not, I will pick up on her slides. Here she comes. Hi.
Hi, I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
There was an explainable internet snafu here that is now fixed.
Okay, great. And I have a comment from Carrie Tyson at KVCog. He says, I'm not sure the best source to find Esri, et cetera, for free, but he will reach out to the Small Business Development Center to confirm if they have a subscription. So
Fantastic.
That was just a great piece of information. And I'm going to go back to sharing the screen, Delilah, okay?
Sorry about that.
That's okay. We're glad you're back because I was going to have to make it up.
You could have made it up.
Okay. from current slide. We were on Restaurant Week, Delilah, and
Great.
it should
And
be.
so I was talking about how it was very helpful to talk to an escape room in another town to say one of the major thing that 400 respondents who already come downtown said they wanted to see more of was activity-based businesses like an escape room. And she credits the 2 years of harassing her, but in a really nice way, for her opening in Biddeford. And they have been really popular and well received. So this has been a helpful process to have this data, use it for recruitment, and then that she's been seeing that, yes, indeed, there really was a lot of support for this coming. Just as another note about that, I think a lot of people are not even touching on social media analytics, are another whole form of marketing, of research that people are doing all the time with data. So that would be another great presentation from somebody who has more expertise in that. But one thing I noticed was when I posted about an escape room, early on in Biddeford, that we had more likes and more shares than almost any other topic that came up. So I took that as a source of data to continue following up on.
That's great. Do you have any recollection, roughly, Delilah, whether the paper responses or the online responses to the restaurant survey were greater?
Much more paper.
Okay, great.
Because they were really easy and one page and sitting right there, usually where people were waiting in line.
Yep. You ready for the next slide?
Yeah.
Okay.
For Restaurant Week, we were also able to take the data from each restaurant that had a significant number of surveys and give them some results. So this is the part of, we collected info, we analyzed the info, we shared the information with our board and committees, but then we also, we were able to share it directly with the restaurants. And for example, a place called Yeddo's was able to see that of their respondents, 90 respondents, that 13% of their total were under 25, and that, I guess I would say about, 70% were between 25 and 65. Those are just kinds of more numbers that they can see for their marketing decisions, and it also helps them see that it was worth their while to just help us to facilitate this survey process.
And it certainly increases the value of the Main Street program to Yeddo's as well.
Right, giving them some free research.
Great. Ready?
Yes.
All right.
With our River Jam, we have again supplied paper surveys as well as sometimes it's a QR code or just tell people to go to the about page of riverjamfest.com, and there's a link there again to a Google form. At this point, there were 17 respondents when I printed this out, but we definitely had more than that. Again, we always ask for the email because we'd like to add them to our newsletter. It's great to ask them what their favorite part of River Jam was. That helps us improve events. I'm thinking of people mentioning parking was a question. So in the next year, we were able to create some more parking solutions and more information about where our parking was. They said they really like to have, in terms of what was your favorite part versus what could we improve, they really liked having music for young children. So we were, again, just making sure to include that again.
That's great.
This question has been very helpful with our sponsors who are often the large banks in the area. After attending River Jam, are you more likely, less likely, or about the same to come back to downtown Biddeford and Saco? We've just found that our banks want to know that when they are sponsoring the Main Street program, that they are increasing, they're sponsoring an event. Well, what is that event doing? Generally events don't ring cash registers on the day of events. People are out in the park. They're not necessarily walking up and down Main Street. But we were able to show that people, a large percent, were more likely to come downtown after having come to the River Jam Festival.
Great.
And then on the right side of the page on that last screen, how did you hear about River Jam? That is just invaluable, because if nobody saw your TV commercial, then definitely do not spend $800 on it again the next year. So just being able to ask people that information is very important. I will say, I'll pause here about some of our events, like Music in the Park is a 10-week music outdoor program that we have, and River Jam is over a weekend. Sometimes we also just have counters out, people who go every 2 hours, stand in one spot, look everywhere and count. And then we also do have them count demographics, and this is highly unscientific. But if we do it again highly unscientifically the next year and the next year, at least we have a similar process that we're using to see if the majority of people are of the 35 to 50, or perhaps the over 50 age group, if they're young families, if they're people of color, children in the area. So again, it's really unscientific at that point, but it does help us see that we're reaching some of our goals, and certainly the number of people there is really helpful to know.
That's great. Ready?
Yep.
All right.
And then these are just, again, showing we did the collection, now we do the results. And the one I wanted to just point to, was that piece that I was just mentioning about learning about River Jam through multiple sources. 42% reported they heard about it through HOB's newsletter and Facebook, which showed that people who were coming were people who already liked us for a large percentage of it. And that also our posters and postcards that we had made were pretty successful in reaching people.
Great.
At the top of it, it says survey participants won the chance to win a $100 gift certificate. Basically, every time we do a survey process like this, we offer people a chance to win something. I'm so much more likely to take a minute of my time to fill something out if I'm going to have a chance at winning a prize than if I'm not. And I think people are pretty similar to me in that way. This last one that we did, we offered a $100 Bowie local card. So we were, now that we have that program happening in our downtown anyway, and a lot of the businesses are signing up for it. It's a great way to just kind of help promote that concept, and it counts as our downtown gift card.
Great. And I would say $100 is substantial. There's that tipping point of like, is it worth a $10 gift certificate? But $100 is substantial. I can see why it drives responses.
Right. This was our most complex survey process that we had done. I had an intern from the University of New England from the business department. He had interest in survey collection, and we made a pretty comprehensive downtown business survey, also working with our city's economic development department for information that they would also be likely to ask in the industrial parks for the larger businesses. So some of the areas that I'll go over in the next slides, I'm happy to share this whole survey with you. But just know that a lot of the questions pertain to a downtown as well as larger businesses. We did have 55 online responses, and the intern was also able to schedule, I think it was 19 other individual surveys. So having an intern who has 10 hours a week to spend in your office is really amazing for, first of all, promoting it, writing posts about it, going back to the places and reminding people to take it, setting up individual interviews for people who don't feel like they have the time to do the online survey. And for us, 55, almost 75 responses was a really high response rate, very helpful.
Wow, great.
So these are pretty quick slides to go through, but just general business information, some business retention questions. The first one was, if you are considering relocating, selling or closing, what would be your primary reason? So just trying to get some of that information from people. Biddeford, finding out information about Biddeford as a business location. So that had a whole set of questions. Knowing how the business owners feel about the overall image of the city was a question we wouldn't have the chance to ask in too many other settings. So there were, quite 6 or 7 questions in each of these categories. Satisfaction with city services. When we did this survey in 2018, it was a time we were considering, the city was considering putting a business improvement district together. And so if the downtown businesses were completely satisfied with city services as they were, it'd be pretty hard to argue that we needed a business improvement district. But if a lot of them said, we need the plowing and shoveling of streets and sidewalks to be a lot faster, or want more turnover on-street parking or something like that, if that had shown in there, that would have potentially, or wanting more police walking the streets, something like that, more community policing, it would have made a good argument for what a business improvement district could pay for. And those were the general categories that we asked about, and then we came up with some key findings, and these were all put into a PowerPoint presentation, and our intern presented it at the City Council. So it was an opportunity to talk about Heart of Biddeford tying in with the university, about university students having good work experience through internships, and then for our City Council to learn about some of the information about the downtowns. For us, I pulled out this one slide of an overall finding or result that the majority of business owners, 71%, said that their sales had increased throughout the past years. And I think if we did it again now, it's been, I think it's just been a year since that survey, we would probably see it even a little higher than that. So that's great information when I'm going to recruit a business from another area to start up here, or somebody's considering starting here a retail business. I can say that our businesses report doing well, and it's not just 5 or 6 of my favorite businesses that I asked. Rather, it was it's an extensive, if not scientific, survey. There was a big process trying to figure out if Biddeford should have a parking garage. And almost 50% of the battle was political. Who wanted it, who didn't want it. And one of the pieces of research we were able to do and then show visually was 82% of business owners were in favor of a new parking facility. That was important. But also, if you look at that graph on the right side of the screen, it shows that businesses with the highest degree of parking ease near their business are least likely to favor a parking garage.
Right.
So that the bar on the far right means that degree of ease near their parking was low. Oh, let's see. So yes, number one, so it's very easy, then I don't really need a parking garage, versus on the far left, it's very difficult, therefore I need a parking garage. So that was one way to show it. And the visualizations, first of all, visualizations can lie. You can use them unethically, but for the most part, people don't really relate to a whole screen full of numbers and percentages. And so where you can show that with a visual, it's very helpful. On the next slide, we used a program called Tableau, and the intern downloaded Tableau Public, which is a free program. And my husband does Tableau work for his work, so he was voluntold by Heart of Biddeford to do a little training for this intern. And then if you go to the next slide, one thing Tableau is just great at is mapping and showing things visually on a map. This one showed the range of business locations that responded to the survey. So of all the surveys that were taken, there's a dot on the screen representing where those businesses were. You can see a couple are in the mill buildings, and so those dots are very large because 5 or 10 or more businesses completed the surveys from those locations. That's helpful to say if somebody says, oh, that data is probably not very good, she probably only talked to the businesses she shops at. Well, no, in fact, it ranged the entire downtown, including some of these side streets and less populated parts of the downtown. I'm always talking in the voice of skeptics. And then this screen was really fun to do with Tableau. And it's the kind of thing I really recommend digging into Tableau if you have somebody who has some time to use something like that, because there are things that you can learn through a Tableau visualization. It's not just using the visualization to show you results, but it's actually to find out if there are results. So if you look on the left side of your screen, one arrow shows a mill building with a large red dot in it. And the bottom arrow shows a small building with a green dot in it. And though that shows there in color how easy it is to find parking. People in that mill building are pretty on the red side. It's very difficult for them to find parking. The little green dot has a parking lot with 7 spaces right outside his building. So he's a nice bright green. Now, if you go to the right side of the screen, it shows the degree to which the businesses are interested in a parking garage. Well, what do you know? That mill building that finds it very difficult to find parking had a high rating of interest in a parking garage being built, versus the man who has 7 spots outside his business. Right. We don't need a parking garage downtown. Of course we don't, because you have 7 parking spots outside your front door. And that is just a way to, again, show things visually that change how people look at things. They can help you tell a story about data. And so that's an example of the sharing process. So the things that I've been talking about are basically creating a tool to get some data, and then collecting that info, and different ways to do it, which might include sometimes incentivizing people, or it might be real unscientific, like standing there and counting demographics, and then analyzing it. And with that analyzing, I think making sure, to ask yourself, what can really be extrapolated from the data? If you have 80 businesses downtown and 4 businesses complete your survey, should you really make any decisions based on that? No. And then finally, the sharing piece. Who gets that info? Is it your board? Is it a certain committee? Is it the businesses that are impacted by it? And how do you share it? How much can you use visualizations to tell the story of your data?
Awesome.
That's what I got.
That's great. Thank you. So many good ideas that I hope everybody heard. Takeaways of, like, first of all, looking for an intern with your local university business school or something like that. Tableau sounds like a great tool. Offering gifts so people respond to your surveys. Doing more informal counters, less scientific, but still a great way to gather data. And then thinking about whether this work, you said at Biddeford it sits in the Business Enhancement Committee, but you also said the org committee had been involved, I think, in one of the surveys you referenced. So I feel like there's a little bit there. I'd like to open it up to see whether we have questions from the audience, the participants in our webinar. And let me I'm going to stop sharing the screen for 1 second. I'm going to thank Delilah, and then I'm going to stop sharing the screen and open it up to some questions. Notice the slide of the Heart of Biddeford office. All right, there we go. So what kind of questions do we have, or comments from our participants today about data that drives decisions? And if you guys in the audience don't have questions, I have questions for Delilah. So we'll see if some people start typing in some questions. You all are on mute, so you can't talk. That's the way the webinar program works. Delilah, do you want to talk a little bit about how it seems like the information gathered in the restaurant survey, you're using it with your sponsors, you're using it with the individual restaurants. Did it inform how Heart of Biddeford puts on Restaurant Week? Has any of the data made you make new decisions or change the way you're doing things?
That is interesting.
It's okay. I can ask the same question of the business survey. Like, how is that data actually informing your work downtown? Does it inform, yes, it seems like it's very valuable to the city, specifically when you're looking at parking. But has any of this changed Heart of Biddeford's work? And then I'll ask you some other questions.
Okay, definitely with the marketing decisions, where we're going to be putting something in a newspaper or not, TV or radio, those kinds of decisions are great to be able to get
True.
from that. Also with events, making sure that, okay, that demographic is coming. We don't have anything for them. Or, gee, there aren't any teenagers coming. Yet we have teenagers in our community, so let's figure out how to offer something at the event that would appeal to teenagers.
That's great.
The Restaurant Week survey, I don't think we got anything from that made us change what we do for Restaurant Week. It's more about the marketing.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, which is really informative and makes you be responsible with spending the marketing dollars or encouraging the restaurants to. So it's useful information. Okay. So I have a couple questions that have come in. Let's see, actually I have a whole bunch. Hold on, here we go. Is this data gathering typically something you take on as the director, Delilah, or does the rest of your board participate in the data gathering? There was a mention that this might take quite a bit of time and it might be a big time commitment. You want to talk a little bit about how the work gets done?
Yeah, we do have a business enhancement committee whose chair has worked in economic development and has a lot of experience with survey work. So she's able to draft the survey, bring it to the committee for feedback, and then the distribution process often involves volunteers who are bringing it, like for example, the Restaurant Week, bringing it around to the businesses and replenishing if those businesses run out. And then the Business Enhancement Committee is actually doing the results kind of download, the analysis, and then bringing it back to that committee again for where do we need this information to go. They actually also had meetings with the restaurants to present the information to say, here's what we found from you. And, the more high touch you can be with things instead of just sending them an email. I don't personally have time to set up 17 restaurant meetings or 16 restaurant meetings, but if you split it up between a committee of 6 or 7 people, now they have a very specific job to do with a business. They feel like, okay, I did outreach to a business that was very meaningful and did a service for that business.
And also these are volunteer tasks that have a limited time commitment in that, you're going to do the survey and gather the survey and analyze the survey. It's not like years of work. It's like a pretty short ask of your volunteers, which I also think is important. So that's great. It does sound like you've surrounded yourself with a committee that has an interest and an understanding of the benefits of gathering some of this data as well. Yeah.
Which would be great for recruiting people for a certain committee too.
I totally agree. So this question is there other data that you can't afford that would be helpful? That is the in-depth analytics too much or too overwhelming versus the more low-cost surface level stuff available for free or for a trial price?
Yeah. Well, we do at Heart of Biddeford, we are just doing kind of a refresh of our own, checking that we know our market segmentation, making sure we're even looking at our mission, making sure that we're on track with the current state of things. We're doing some engagement. And so spending that $50 on Esri was well timed for that. I think that there are some other types of even the census that would be good for that committee to be able to take into place. And that's for like the overall mission of the organization. These types of surveys that we're doing a lot of the times are for pretty specific fixes or changes or, adjustments, as opposed to like looking at the overall mission of the organization and the function of like how our results are happening for the whole downtown.
And I'll add that another thing I found when preparing for today's webinar is that if you have a franchise or a chain in your downtown, those businesses often have done extensive market analysis prior to placing or locating downtown, and they are often, you can get access to that research. So think about that as another source of potentially free, interesting data. Were you going to add some? Yeah.
Also, with especially like Square card reader, I had asked just a subset of our businesses to tell me if they could compare this summer to last summer with credit cards from out of state. And they were all showing an increase in that. And our city theater also shows that 30% of their summer customers are from out of state. So
interesting.
That's a neat way to get some data.
That is great. We have another question. How do you avoid survey fatigue? How do you space out the surveys so people don't get sick of taking them?
Abigail, you live in Biddeford. You tell me, are you sick of my surveys? I do think offering a prize and promoting that prize, we always take a picture of whenever possible, take a picture of the person happy holding the prize to like show. I see what you wrote, Abigail.
I should just share that Abigail, who asked that question, said that she is one of those special people that likes taking surveys.
Right, very special. But I do think the rewards are important, and also showing results. Like this year's, we had done a quick survey on Facebook last fall to ask people about their music choices. Then this spring, when we unveiled the bands, we said one of the highest ranked choices on our online survey last year was Kenya Hall, and here she is, our headliner. So being able to show people the results of their
that's true. That actually really makes it impactful, that it's worth taking the survey.
Yeah.
Like they were listened to.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Any other questions from our participants today? As I always say, these quick learning opportunities are typically between 40 and 45 minutes, and we are at 41 minutes. So if I don't see any more questions coming in, we will again send out a little quick survey, a link to this particular webinar if you want to share it with your economic vitality or business enhancement committee or one of those data junkies you're recruiting for your board. And then we will also send a link. I've already prepared internally a number of surveys, but I'm going to make sure I get a full copy of the 2 surveys that Delilah shared with us today, the Restaurant Week and then the Business Survey, so that you have copies of those. They're a great way to start to build your survey in your downtown. Delilah, any closing comments?
Just based on something you said a minute ago about people feeling listened to, just always being aware of setting reasonable expectations if you do any focus groups or surveys, that it doesn't always apply on every survey or focus group, but just letting people know whether you're going to be taking this data in to help you make a decision or if it's going to be determining the decision. For example, we had a mural contest downtown and we wanted the community to vote, and we let people know that their votes would then be given to a committee who would make the final selection or something like that. You want to.
That's a really good point.
How that will be used.
Great. Thank you for that reminder, and I really appreciate your time in preparing for this. And thank you to all our participants, and hope you all got something out of it. Our next webinar, I can't remember. I will put it in the email I send you. And thank you all for attending, and have a nice day.
Thanks, Anne.
Bye.